we get this sort of place-holding synth knocking out steady chords, and then almost immediately this voice singing out comes in. Um, and I'm going out on a limb here, but it may be Persian.
Hey, everybody out there in the Audiophiles listening audience. Welcome back to another edition of Viewer Request Friday here at the channel. And today, John and I have discussed this off camera. Today, John's going to be going off and giving a listen to a request that was put forth by R Bets X. And it was made in our Tears for Fears Woman in Chains video. And it is for you to go off and listen to Holger Czukay and the tune Persian Love, and Holger Czukay of Can fame. So this will be his second appearance on the channel in one way, shape, or form. We discussed this earlier, but for the sake of the audience, are you familiar with any of their stuff outside of Can as individuals, or even any of Can's stuff outside of what we've listened to?
Yeah, so from we listened to Mother Sky, which is our Can soundtracks.
Yes.
I did a bit of a dive into Can. Ego Mago. And fucking Eggy Bamyoshi. And of course, Future Days. So yeah, I sort of they're the four albums that I got of Can that I'm familiar with. I have to say that was a real revelation because I had Can for years, and never. Absolutely brilliant, and absolutely love them. But I've not heard any of their solo stuff, so this would be really interesting.
I gotta say, from my perspective of being the one that has to go through and do all the homework and so forth, I had a lot of fun with this one. Not just listening to it, but digging into sort of the nitty gritty of the man himself and his history in music and all that. It was really kind of fun to dive into. So yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy this one. It's very different and its own thing, but it's really cool. So why don't you go off, give it a listen, and come back and let our bets, the rest of us, and myself know what you think of this track.
Will do. Okay. Obviously it says Persian Love, and you got the thumbnail there, but I still wasn't expecting Persian music coming in. Yeah, that's a surprise. I'm wondering because the sound quality of the vocals and stuff is slightly muffled. I don't know if it's some sort of sample or something. I have no idea when this was. Guessing it's post Can, guessing. So it could be any time from, I think he left like mid-70s onwards. I know he died about 5-10 years ago, something like that. So it could be any time in between. It's really pretty. It's that synth, and then the vocals come in, and then there was really high guitar. It sounded so pretty. And then the slightly lower guitar starts plucking, and the synths coming in, and the beats coming in, and it's quite joyful actually. Sounds lovely. I'm just going to bring it back a touch so that let's see how this goes. I have no idea what's going to happen here. Okay, getting the picture now. There's not much to say, is there, apart from just how it's really beautiful sounding. And it is uplifting. I'm getting weird mental pictures as you do, because to all intents and purposes, this is, for me, an instrumental. The vocals, which I'm guessing Persian, are fairly meaningless, no, completely meaningless to me. So it's just another sound, and it's a very beautiful sound. Yeah, it's just, I'm getting this sort of uplifting and swirling. Honestly, I'm getting pictures of swallows in like sort of early evening, riding thermals and ducking in for insects off rooftops and around sides of buildings. Um, don't know why, but I am. Yeah, there's different stringed instruments, and it'd be silly to say they're all guitars. I'm sure they're not. And there's some hand percussion as well, which sounds really pretty as well. Um, yeah, it's just got a really delightful sort of gait to it. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, this is really pleasing.
بارها با آتش غم ساختیم بار دیگر ز آتش غم سوختیم
If you took out the Asian vocals and some of the other bits, and you just had that beat and the synths, it's almost like a pathway to a lot of 80s music. It can be really easily seen as that. I'm really liking this.
Yar
Those vocals there was some a bit earlier as well, a minute or so, a minute and a half. Jesus, this is flying by. Is that throat singing that I've heard of? Could be. Just throwing it out there. Somebody correct me. Wowzers. It just ended. I was quite ready for that to be going on for a couple more minutes, to be fair. Yeah, it's obviously is very beautiful and really joyous, really uplifting. I think the way the music flows, you have that sort of bass dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, going along, and then these other instruments just come in, do their shit, and it's very rarely is it expected pattern that goes off. I was like a jazzy improv, but it has such freedom to this, which makes it feel airy. So that's why I'm getting pictures of being 50 foot up in the air above town or something, whether it's birds or kites or something, but it's zigzagging in the air and it's real freedom. Yeah, this just sounds wonderful. Yeah, really, really impressed. It's a great shout, great track. I am very interested to hear more about this. When the hell was this? I'm guessing it says 1979 right in the top corner. You idiot. Wow, 1979. How did he do this? Because they weren't really sampling then. Was it cut and paste? Slicing away and tape? So I know they were doing that in the late 70s. Jeez. That's incredible. And this is, you can clearly hear in this music that followed on years later. Really influential. Must have been. Okay. Well, let's get back and find out some more information from Andy.
All right. Welcome back. So, this is a strange journey, but a good one, in my opinion. What do you say about it?
So I would say first off that my knowledge of Persian music is about much the same as that of quantum entanglement. I mean, sure, in quantum theory, certain physical systems can be entangled, meaning that the states are directly related to the state of another object somewhere else. And when one object is measured and the Schrodinger waveform collapses into a single state, the other object collapses into a corresponding state, no matter how far apart the objects are. Einstein called this quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. So yeah, it's scant at best, I would say.
Yeah.
But I would say that that seems like a lot of work for a really weak gag. It's even so, even though I saw the title and then the thumbnail come up, I was still surprised when it really was Persian love coming through into my ears. So we get this sort of place-holding synth knocking out steady chords, and then almost immediately this voice singing out comes in. And I'm going out on a limb here, but it may be Persian. Just as you're kind of digesting this new sound, there's a very extremely pretty stringed instrument fluttering in, almost Mark Knopfler style. Now, I did say in the action that although I may refer to these instruments as guitars in places, I'm fairly sure that other instruments are used. I can imagine an oud or a lute or anything else. I really have no idea. So all I know is what they sound like. And I do refer to them as guitars at various points. But so we get this sort of 6-note rising trill from a symphony type thing. And then this second guitar-like creature gallops into the paddock with a riff that wouldn't be out of place in some sort of noughties indie dance number. It's very, you can feel the echoes through the decades. It does sound that way. And I'm beginning to feel that we're a musical equivalent of an archaeological dig. You can peg a line from the present going down through the strata to these sounds. Because obviously we're tapping into stuff which has been around hundreds, if not thousands of years in terms of the Persian sounds. I did notice, I'll get into this later. I did notice that the sound quality of the Persian voices and the instruments was slightly inferior to the rest, making me think that this probably was snatched samples being blended in. Again, we'll go on to that in a bit.
Yes,
So
we
get this traditional Western beat kicking in. And from here onwards, it's really tricky to dissect the music. So there's this foundation of like synth and bass and drums, but all the other contributions come and they go. And my first impressions, again, because it's instrumental for purposes that, you know, I've listened to this, for me, it is an instrumental. The voices are like another instrument, you know. I got no hope of knowing what they're saying. So my first impressions mentally, I was picturing swallows at dusk, swooping and checking over rooftops and down the sides of buildings for insects. And I watched this occurring most evenings when I visit France, in the village where I stay, and it's really a glorious thing to see. And they're at speed, and I was just getting all this sort of dynamic freedom, but flowing smoothly as well. So string the instruments, I shall call them, trill and play together, but they rarely repeat the same phrase. It's always just slightly different. And there's hand percussion sliding in as well. And there's the odd keyboard line that sort of takes it in a different direction. I found it all tremendously pretty and uplifting and joyful. As the song progresses, we get different vocal parts coming in. They're different voices, definitely. And I sort of wondered, do they represent anything like characters or thoughts or ideals? But no idea. And at round 340, and again later around like the 5-minute mark, we get these like gurgling notes. And I did stop the reaction and wondered, because I'd heard about this thing called throat singing. And I wondered if it was that, but I've never heard throat singing. So I just thought, I imagine that sounds what throat singing would sound like if it was it. So, you know, it was an idea. And then it occurred to me, if you stripped out the Middle Eastern sounds and you left this synth and bass and drums, it could easily be an 80s track. And there's some foundation there for 80s music, definitely. And I'd say at this point, I'm in the dark as to when this was. Maybe even like a bit of Talking Heads in there. And there's a cascading like synth line in there, which really reminds me of something 80s, and I couldn't think what it was. It's kind of like a Tom Tom Club ripoff sort of track, but I couldn't picture it entirely. But then obviously Tom Tom is related to Talking Heads, so that all goes around. There's a repeating guitar riff around the 440 mark that reminded me of the Bundu Boys. Their sort of Zimbabwean sound, the guitar, that sort of high. It's really, really, and because it repeats, it's much easier to pin down. It's really nice. And then the song goes, and just, it caught me by surprise when it ended, to be honest with you, because this isn't really a song. This is more like, I feel it's like almost an existential sort of meander. It's so light and airy, and it kind of, towards the end, it reinforced the idea of being like 50 foot up in the air as a bird or a kite or something, barely tethered to the earth. The track has this real, apart from that bass that I talked about, there's real freeform nature to the melodies, which is probably more in common with like jazz improv, you know. But at the heart of the song is beauty and freedom. Yeah, I mean, it really was so pretty to listen to. And funny enough, when I finished at the end, I was yambling on about, you know, I don't know when this was. And then I looked up, and in the top left-hand corner, it did say 1979. So I'm fucking idiot. So then it made me wonder, because sampling wasn't really happening then, but I know they were doing like cut and paste, so I imagine he must have done tape work to this, but it was just really, that was even more impressive because I know that was kind of in its infancy. There wasn't a lot of that going on at all then. And then again, this world music thing, was fairly, I mean, it really sort of started to kick in at the beginning of the 80s, and this is 79. So it's ahead of its time as well. So all of this is just like hugely impressive. A technical point and a sort of vision point, but as a track as well, I just thought it was really beautiful. And you could just listen to this and drift off for hours on end. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you've said. The one thing that I was waiting for you to say that maybe I thought maybe I'm incorrect in having thought this or had this sort of personal revelation when I listened to it, but did you think that the percussion sounded like they could have translated pretty easily to reggae? Because some of the percussions, and there was almost this island like sound to the particularly the percussions that I picked on at points in the song, as well as hearing everything that you picked up on too. But just to add to that world music kind of or this cross-pollinating of genres that are happening throughout the song, I thought at times, man, this could really go well with almost reggae type style music, and particularly the percussions. But yeah,
I didn't get that from listening to it this time. I'd have to listen to it again.
okay.
Now you planted that seed, I probably will hear it. So there.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I totally had the same experience you did listening to this. I thought it was beautiful, and I thought it was less of a song and more of just like a piece that part of it is music. Music is clearly part of this, but there's other, I don't know, it just seemed like a whole different medium almost to me. But yeah, I really did enjoy this a lot too, and I'm glad you did. I had a haunting suspicion you would. But yeah, Holger Czukay, known professionally as Holger Czukay, was a German musician best known and co-founder of the krautrock group Can, which we've clearly established at this point, described as successfully bridging the gap between pop and the avant-garde. Czukay was also notable for having created early important examples of ambient music, for having explored world music, which you just discussed, well before the term was even coined, and for having been a pioneer of sampling, which you also discussed there a moment ago. He was born on March 24th, 1938, in the free city of Danzig, present-day, is it Gdansk, Poland, which his family was expelled from after World War II. And due to the turmoil of the war, Czukay's primary education was very limited. One pivotal early experience, however, was working when still a teenager at a radio repair shop, where he became fond of the oral qualities of radio broadcasts and became familiar with the rudiments of electrical repair and engineering. Czukay studied music under Karl-Heinz Stockhausen from 1963 to 1966, which is probably wildly important to his growth as a musician, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
And then worked for a while as a music teacher, which I guess that's what 3 or 4 years of studying under Stockhausen will get you. Now you can teach it. Initially, Czukay had a little interest in rock music, but this changed when a student played him the Beatles' 1967 song "I Am the Walrus," a psychedelic rock single with an unusual musical structure and blasts of AM radio noise. This opened his ears to music by experimentalists such as the Velvet Underground and Frank Zappa. Now, I just named a bunch of kind of rock royalty and names that we've discussed on this show before. So it's kind of interesting how all these different things can splinter off and inspire all this. Like, who would have thought that the Beatles would inspire sampling, or what we know as modern day sampling? But here is this weird family tree that kind of illustrates it. It's really cool. Czukay co-founded Can in 1968. He played bass guitar and undertook most of the recording and engineering for the group. Roscoe G, former bassist of the British band Traffic, joined the band in 1977, and Czukay handling only tapes and sound effects on the album Saw Delight, his final LP with the group before departing for a solo career. And Czukay had been sidelined due to creative disputes and his failure to progress as a bassist, admitting his shortcomings on the instrument, which he had taken up almost by default in the early days of Can. After his departure, Czukay recorded several albums. One of his trademarks was the use of shortwave radio sounds and his early pioneering of sampling, in those days involving the painstaking cutting and splicing of magnetic tapes, which I think we discussed a little bit on our can review as well, but bears mentioning again because of the tedious nature of the work involved. Now, I mean, today's software and all this stuff makes that work so much easier that you really need to like think and consider the tedious nature of having to do this in the 70s or something like that. It's incredible to me. He would tape record various sounds and snippets from shortwave and incorporate them into his compositions. He also used shortwaves as a live interactive musical instrument, a method of composition he termed radio painting. Czukay collaborated with a considerable number of musicians, notably a series of albums with Jah Wobble and David Sylvian. I thought it'd be it's interesting that we just talked about Jah recently, you and I. And he's popped up here and there, and here we go. We see him again. Sadly, on September 5th, 2017, Czukay was found dead in his apartment, converted from Cannes' old studio in Weiler, Swiss, near Cologne. You help me out here. I'm not the European. The New York Times reported that he had died on the same day, but that the cause of his death was subject to police investigation. His death was eventually assumed to have been from natural causes. Now, this track, Persian Love, is featured on Holger Czukay's second album, Movies, which was released in 1979, as you mentioned, having caught in the video. He called his album Movies not only because it featured samples from various movies he was watching while playing his bass along with scenes from said movies, but also for the similarities he saw between the work he was doing in the studio and the art of film editing. With 4 editing machines, this is a quote from Holger, with 4 editing machines, I made a sort of 4-color print of the whole thing. That means here I took from this mix, quite good with the guitar here, but it was too loud over here, and suddenly you start becoming sort of a filmmaker. Films are made like that. You shoot the scenes and shoot it several times, and later you put it together by these different takes. And this is the way I would make my music. And suddenly I found out as well that music creates a certain sort of vision. It has a visual character. And I thought that was a really interesting way or insight into how he looked at the music making process with all this extra shit he was doing. It's really clever and interesting. The Independent labeled the album a cult classic, writing that Czukay paved the way for later projects such as David Byrne, I think you mentioned Talking Heads, and David Byrne and Brian Eno's My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. Spin awarded the album 9 out of 10 stars. It earned an 8 out of 10 from Pitchfork. While AllMusic rates it a 3 out of 5-star album. Now I'm going to touch on an excerpt from Pitchfork. I know, right? Oh, okay, AllMusic. I'm going to touch on an excerpt here that is apropos, though it is from Pitchfork, so disclaimer out there now. They would say that Czukay builds a track out of snippets from Farsi songs and soundtracks, pairing the ululations with nimble key phrases and spry guitar licks. And while it draws on Persian sounds, the playfulness of the music surrounding can also bring to mind King Sunny Ade's High Life, suggesting a willful blurring of boundaries between Germany, Iran, and Africa, which is interesting because I think you mentioned Zimbabwe earlier. I also found this snippet from the Music Aficionado blog to be an excellent summary of the tune. The most noticeable development on the record is the use of sampling to drive the song's melody and harmony. The best example is Persian Love, including voices of Iranian singers singing various unrelated melodies captured via shortwave radio. The samples are weaved together into a coherent song with a guitar accompaniment built around the musical phrases of the singers and a simple repetitive beat. Jah Wobble was quoted in a 1980 article praising the song, saying, "The voices on it are so beautiful. I thought to myself, I will never try to sing again." Scottish novelist Alan Warner wrote a terrific article on the song, and I do suggest that anyone interested in this topic go out and find that. It was a great article to read after listening to the song. And he would go on to say that it was a skipping a sinuous waltz tempo of a song. Persian Love has none of the seriousness or angularity associated with the avant-garde. It is 6 minutes and 22 seconds of what beauty and life's joy is to extract. So yeah, I thought that was very similar to your experience with the song, where you just instantly felt this uplifting joy for whatever reason,
Yeah.
even though, you know, no idea what is being said in Farsi on this track. But there is this like joy for life in the tone and the exuberance that they're delivered, and just the music only further, you know, enriches the pot with that kind of mood and feeling as well. Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. The way that he would go to these lengths, and I don't know if he like. It's almost like he stumbled upon this idea through just hearing things like transistor radios, and what a genesis moment that is. Like this early '60s, you know, revelation that you're a bit of an audiophile yourself. You enjoy all these weird sounds you're hearing from these new machines, and the first thing you think of, or perhaps the revelation that you have in the wake of that, is to just create music using these sounds. So weird and cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, actually. I didn't realize until you said that the samples he's using in this track were from the radio. So he's
Yeah.
just taping them, not even perhaps knowing what the source is. Just say, oh, I like the sound of that. It's a bit like recording sort of birdsong or something like
Yeah.
that and putting that in. You know, it was out in the ether and he's captured it and then spliced it in.
Or you're watching a film and you're recording the audio from it to then place into this composition later that you're going to make, with adding music to it, and this bass line that you're sort of just, you know, tinkering around with as you're watching the film, writing it, and you're like, oh my god, I have this vision. And to make that all come together and work like he has in this audio medium is just, I don't know. It's sorcery, it's wizardry, it's genius, it's all of those things. And it's so cool to think how so many people that aren't like this guy are you know, walking in his footsteps and using, like, you're hearing music that is clearly influenced by his revelations, that these guys probably don't know who he is, or you know, they're using it to create a sound so divorced from what he was doing. It's just really cool and interesting how that's worked out.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
That was an interesting episode. This is an interesting character. I'm only further interested to hear more stuff by Can, or even other stuff that he's done on his own. It's really wildly impressive. It probably comes as a surprise to no one that there won't be lyrics on this episode, because I don't speak Farsi. I couldn't find anything in the way of it on the internet, but there you have it. I don't even know what it was sampled from. I couldn't even find that. So yeah, really interesting stuff. But that will have to remain a mystery. John, thanks for giving this a listen. We really appreciate Arbets, you giving this, offering this up to us to check out. It was our pleasure. Feel free, guys out there in the listening audience, to drop suggestions that we should check out on future Friday episodes. Perhaps your thoughts, definitely your thoughts on Holger Czukay, Can, this song in particular, perhaps this album Movies, which seems to have gotten really rave reviews over the years. But yeah, all that out of the way, think about liking, sharing, and subscribing if you haven't. We really do appreciate it. We've now officially made it over 1,000, and unfortunately now that means we've got to set new goals. So we're going to try to continue to grow the channel and get those numbers up, and we can't do that without you. So thank you so much. And with all that out of the way, John and I will see all y'all in hope and growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.